I'm Candace Einsbar with Colorado Fastpitch Academy. Today I will be discussing something called territories and priorities. This is something that's very important for all infielders and outfielders to really know, but most importantly for a catcher to know. One of the things that I really emphasize with my catchers is knowing their positions and knowing what their job is in each position. Territories and priorities refers to who is supposed to get what ball in what situation. For example, a territory is your area in which you are in charge of getting balls on the field. A catcher, for example, should truly be in charge of any area around home plate, referring way out to 5 to 8 feet past home plate. She is coming out of her squat position, so we're not actually expecting her to cover a whole lot bigger area than that, but we are expecting her to cover the majority of that range, particularly a little bit more up on the first base line. With the first baseman tending to play further back, it tends to be a little bit more natural for her to cover more area than the first baseman. In a priority situation, what we're looking at is who has priority over who. One of the number one things that I see when I do go watch my students play is how often a ball will be hit, either a bunt or a pop-up, and it happens to be in an area where people aren't quite sure whose territory it is, and you end up seeing two girls running towards the ball. Maybe both of them are calling it, I got it, I got it, I got it. They're both calling it out, they're both running for it full blast, and then they hear the other one calling it, and they both back off, and the ball drops right between them. Or, what's really more dangerous, and certainly not as good, is the fact that they may neither one back off and then run right into each other. So, to prevent injury, as well as to make sure that we don't drop pop-ups that are easily catchable, to make sure that we are always getting bunts and not letting them go because we don't know whose job it is to cover, that's where priorities comes in. So for example, the third baseman is got priority over the catcher, the pitcher, and the first baseman. So let's say there's a bunt that happens right out in front of home, maybe just past the catcher's territory. It's pretty close to the pitcher's territory, pretty close to the third baseman's territory, pretty close to the first baseman's territory. Since the softball field isn't color-coded, nobody really knows which ball or whose ball it's actually supposed to be. So everybody's barreling towards the ball. Everybody's calling it. If everybody also knows that the third baseman has priority, they all know to back off because the third baseman is also calling it. So it's important to know who has priority over who. If I'm the third baseman, I know I have priority over everybody. If I start calling a ball, I'm going for it no matter what because everybody else has to back off. The pitcher doesn't have priority over anyone. She's coming out of her pitch. So really, it's the most difficult for her to get to the ball faster than anybody else. It doesn't mean she won't get the ball. That's where territories comes in. If it's in her territory, which is basically any area in her circle, maybe even a little bit more on the first base side outside the circle, then ultimately she's expected to get it, and a third baseman would probably not call off a pitcher when the ball is right next to her. But if they're not quite sure whose ball it is, now they know who's supposed to back off and who's supposed to get it. If the first baseman and the catcher are both going for the ball, the catcher has priority over the first baseman. The catcher might be calling it, the first baseman might be calling it, ultimately the first baseman has to back off. The catcher has priority because she is already facing first base. She has the best angle and ultimately has the best throw and approach. The first baseman is coming towards the ball with her back towards first base. She would have to turn around, not to mention first basemen tend to play a little bit further back. If the first baseman and the pitcher are both calling it, then the first baseman does have priority because, as I said, the pitcher has no priority over anybody. So, if the pitcher, the catcher, and the first baseman are all going after it, the catcher's the one who gets it because she has priority over the first baseman and the pitcher. If just the pitcher and the first baseman are getting it, first baseman gets it. If the pitcher and the third baseman are going after it, third baseman gets it. If everybody on the field knows this, then there's no more chances of bunts getting left behind or people running into each other to attempt to get a pop-up and they don't know who's supposed to back off. Now, territories and priorities can extend into the outfield and also to plays that are more in the deep infield, such as shortstop and second base. Your shortstop has priority over the third baseman. She plays further back. Second base has priority over the first baseman. Shortstop has priority over the second baseman. So if there's a ball between the two of them, shortstop gets it, second base has to back off. Outfielders have priorities over infielders. So if there's a pop-up between the shortstop and the left fielder gets it because ultimately outfielders have priority. Center field has priority over left field and right field. So center fielder is running over to get a ball, and the left fielder and the center fielder are both calling it. Center field has priority, left fielder has to back off. It's always the person that's further behind that has priority because they have the best viewpoint. And so as you're moving further into the field, that's how you're going to figure out who has priority over who. In this instance, this is one of the most looked over, or should I say overlooked things that a lot of coaches don't always spend time on. And yet it really can make or break a game. So if you are a catcher and your coach hasn't gone over territories and priorities yet, you do want to make sure that you bring this up to them and let them know that it's something that you have learned about, and that ultimately you want to make sure that everybody on the field is under the same notion. So that way if you back off because the third baseman is calling it, you don't get in trouble for the fact that you thought she had priority. It also is important for any position on the field so that you can prevent collisions and get the most outs necessary. No matter how old you are, it's never too late to start practicing territories and priorities. There's a lot more to this, so if you would like to learn more about how I go over territories and priorities and how I do lessons, you can go to my website, www.softballlessons.com, for more information.